The chair, you are now live.
Great, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I would like to call to order the September 20th meeting of the Audit and Finance Standing Committee. It is currently 10:06 a.m. My name is Paul Russell and I represent Lower Sackville. I do apologize for the late change of this becoming a virtual meeting. As is standard with virtual meetings, and this is the first one we've had in a little while, I would like to run through some of the individuals who are in the meeting and just make sure that their audio and video is working properly. So let's start with Mayor Mike Savage. Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning. I'm going to be on mute because I'm right outside, just beside the protesters, but I'm here ready to go. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Councillor Daigle-Gammon, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning. Councillor Hensby, good morning.
Good morning, all.
Good morning. Jared Blackwood, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
And John Traves, good morning.
Morning, Chair, members of the committee.
Good morning. And so we will have other people joining us through the meeting, and we will confirm their audio and video when we get to their items. I would also like to acknowledge that the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of August 16th, 2023. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you,
So move,
Councillor
Mr. Chairman. So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Hensby, for moving that. Thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon, for seconding it. Are there any errors or omissions? Not seeing any. All in favor of the minutes of August 16th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Great, thank you very much. Those pass. The next item is the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Dorothy, over to the clerk. Do we have anything?
We do not have any additions or deletions from the clerk's office.
Great, thank you very much. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Seconded by Councillor Hensby. Seconded by Councillor Hensby. Great,
So
thank you.
second it.
Any changes from committee? Not seeing any. All in favor of the order of business as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Great, thank you very much. Business arising note of the minutes? I don't see any. Call for declaration of conflict of interest. I don't see any there either. Motions of rescission, reconsideration, consideration of deferred matters, and notices of tabled matters are all none. Correspondence, over to Dorothy. Do we have any correspondence for this meeting?
There have been no correspondence received to the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you. And do we have any petitions?
Petition received to the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you. And from members of the committee? I don't see any. There are no information items brought forward. So we are on to the public participation portion of the meeting. And with this portion of the meeting, we have this at the beginning of every meeting. And this is where members of the public are able to come and present their thoughts and concerns and ideas to members of the committee. Please keep your comments respectful, on topic, and directed to the chair. The clerk will announce when you have 30 seconds remaining and when your time is complete. Any member of the public who has registered with the clerk's office on this matter will be given 5 minutes to speak. When I call your name, and at this point we only have, I think, one presenter. So when I call your name, you would be able to start, and then we will go ahead for the 5 minutes. The speaker that we have listed is Matt Stickland. We can see that you've joined the meeting, but I can't see or hear you.
Yeah, just switching to an attendee switched my input device. So I don't know. I'm not hearing you in the correct place right now.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we.
And that's all that matters because this is primarily a one-way conversation for 5 minutes.
Okay. Go ahead, Matt.
So hello, Chair and Committee. My name is Matt Stickland, and I am the president of the Legal Road Users Bicycle Club, which is now an official society. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I've included as part of this presentation 10 documents. They are either primary documents or secondary documents that link to primary documents, all of which inform the speech that I'm making today. And I'm talking to you today because I believe that climate change is an emergency currently poised to impact us more than we are fiscally ready for. What is clear and has been clear since at least 2003 is that the current low density patterns of development and the automotive monopoly on transportation have been negatively impacting municipal coffers and won't work long term. But you know this. Every year, the city has less and less money for capital projects, less and less money to maintain municipal assets. And on top of not being able to maintain the stuff we have or build adequate infrastructure for the future, we also struggle to put infrastructure into established communities. Why is it that one of the most heavily taxed populations in one of the richest countries of the world can't afford nice things? Why is it that we don't have money for capital projects? Why don't we have the money to maintain infrastructures? Do you already know this year's budget won't have all of the money you need for the things that we want? Aren't you the least bit curious to know where our money is going? And while I think this is a very large question, I'm the president of a bicycle club and you are the finance committee of an order of government who can only influence municipal finance decisions and land use. So naturally, I'm here to talk to you about how you use the land for transportation and what personal vehicles you choose to prioritize with that land. And is it not time to consider diversifying our transportation portfolio? The big brains over at Harvard did a study about the cost of automotive infrastructure in their home state of Massachusetts. For the year of 2019, official government spending on roads was about $5 million, direct costs in paving and direct debt services related to paving. The unaccounted for cost to the state's economy totaled $65 billion. On a personal level, that's money coming off of my paycheck, going to gas, insurance, winter tires, maintenance, etc. All of those costs are ongoing fees I have to pay to private multinational companies to access the transportation network you built with my money. Excluding the cost of these vehicles, these are all private fees I have to pay to access a public good funded by my taxes. And I have to pay these fees, even though my access to the public transportation network is unsafe for me because it is not being built in line with your priority plans. In Massachusetts, this aspect of the transportation economy costs their state $27 billion. This study also estimates the cost of public roads cost everyone in Massachusetts, and it cost everyone $14,000. This money is not divided equally, as the poor who can't afford the private fees to drive or the climate conscious who don't want to drive still pay $14,000 for roads they can't or don't use. That study also estimated the cost from poor land use, things like undercharging for parking or too much land dedicated to roads rather than functional or practical taxable land like housing or commerce. That cost to municipal coffers was about $15 billion. Now, our numbers will be different, but our patterns are not that much different. So our numbers, the issue in the numbers will still be there in Halifax. How different does the presentation on the pavement quality index look if it's Jerry Blackwood giving that presentation, doing a cost benefit analysis instead of Brad Anguish doing that presentation, reassuring council that he can in fact maintain with an ever increasing road budget? So I would ask, no, I would beg, I am begging you, please ask Jerry Blackwood and his team to try and figure out the true cost of the transportation monopoly to our municipality. I submitted the study from Harvard, which has its methodologies and assumption. It would be quite easy for you to give a motion to staff, and the smart people in Blackwood's department can probably pretty quickly figure out if Halifax is vulnerable in the same way as the state of Massachusetts is. In your shoes, I would assume that Halifax is vulnerable in this way, and I would also ask for budget alternatives that more fully account for the cost of automotive infrastructure and ways the city can possibly start to make up that debt. But I am too ignorant of the world of finance to know what that second half of this motion would look like. But make no mistake, our transportation system is not sustainable. Now is the time to diversify our transportation portfolio, because if we do not at least start to diversify this portfolio right now, by 2030, it will already be too late for most of our climate goals. And I timed it for 5 minutes, so that's me. That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Matt, for that presentation, for that discussion. I don't see that there are any questions in the chat. So again, thank you for stepping forward. We will take that into consideration as we move forward and talk about the different budgets that we will be talking about. There are no further speakers for public participation. So I'm going to move ahead with the agenda. 13.1 Auditor General, there is no report at this time. Item 13.2.1 is the first quarter 23-24 financial report. So Jerry, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, members of Audit and Finance Committee. So today we're going to present the first quarter report. So that's the period of April 1 to June 30th. And today that presentation is going to be done by Tiffany Smith. I know most of you will know Tiffany. She's been around HRM as a finance business partner for a number of years and did her CPA with the municipality. And as of last year, is a senior leader of the finance team and has the portfolio of service delivery in finance. So I just wanted to introduce Tiffany, and she will take everybody through the presentation here this morning. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jerry. So Tiffany Smith, Manager of Service Delivery, and I'm going to walk you through the first quarter financial report this morning. Next slide, please. So we're going to start with the projected position, which is a deficit of 12.6 million. That's primarily made up of a decrease in deed transfer tax revenue of 10 million due to continued decrease in the residential real estate market activity. 2.3 million is associated with Tantallon wildfire costs, and 1.6 million is an increase in utilities such as natural gas, heating fuel, and propane, as well as building maintenance and equipment costs above budget. This is partially offset by a decrease in compensation and benefits across the organization of 1.6 million. Next slide. So I'm just going to pause for a second and highlight disaster-related expenses. Due to the timing of this report, as mentioned previously, only 2.3 million is currently captured in the projected position. The costs have been updated since then. Below is highlighting the most recent actuals and commitments for the fire and the floods. Currently, the fire is sitting at 13.7 million. And the floods are 2.4 million. We are expecting additional costs related to the floods. Preliminary estimates put it between 5 to 10 million. Next slide, please. So next, we're going to look at risks and opportunities. So this is items that we're monitoring throughout the year that could impact our projections. A lot of these risks are ones that you would have seen last year as well that are persistent. So the impacts of severe weather-related events. We've had a number this year. We're currently in hurricane season, and we'll continue to monitor this as we proceed into the winter storm season. Continued decreases in deed transfer tax. Inflation and stock shortages are persistent issues and continue to impact our operational as well as capital budgets. Fluctuations in commodity costs, such as fuel, diesel, and salt. Staffing levels, there continues to be difficulty recruiting certain positions, and housing continues to be a pressure. Next slide. Next, we'll take a look at councillors' funds. There's two, district capital as well as district activity. For the district capital on a $3.2 million budget, 1.5 million has been spent or committed, and that leaves 1.7 million available for the remainder of the year. For district activity, $72,000 budget. Of that, 36.5 thousand has been spent or committed, and that leaves just under half, 35.5 thousand available for the remainder of the year. Next slide. For recreation area rates, so there's 22 of these accounts. That's up from 21 last year with the addition of the Waverley Community Association. The surplus in these accounts to start the year was 1.2 million. They've earned 514,000 in revenues against expenses of 593,000, and that leaves the surplus as of June 30th at 1.2 million. Next slide. So for the reserves, our opening balance is 464 million for the beginning of the fiscal year. We have commitments of 268 million and pending contributions of 65 million. So the closing projected balance at the end of this fiscal is 260 million. We are showing projected closing balances over the next 3 fiscal years, as well as future commitments, and our projected uncommitted balance as of fiscal 26-27 is 56 million. Next slide. So the aged accounts receivable as of June 30th, amounts outstanding are for property taxes, 21.2 million. For local improvement charges, 11.9 million. Payments in lieu of taxes, this is a negative figure, 100,000. This is an amount owed from the province, but is showing up negative due to a timing difference in the date of the billing. General revenue is 5.5 million for a total gross accounts receivable as of June 30th of 38.5 million. Next slide. So next is the capital projection summary. So net budget available before expenditures is 1.1 billion. It's a bit of a bigger figure than we typically present, just to highlight some of the bigger projects that are contributing to this large balance. That includes Mill Cove, electric bus procurement, Cogswell, as well as the new Bedford West Fire Station. Expenditures to June 30th are 29.7 million. Projected expenditures to the end of this fiscal year are 262.6 million. And that leaves a projected work to progress into the fiscal 24-25 of 791.5 million. And 333 million is multi-year future budgets in that opening balance as well. Next slide. So for hospitality expenditures for the 3-month period ended June 30th, there was just under 4,800 spent in hospitality expenditures. The biggest contributor here would be the Urban Awards, and full details are available in attachment 9 of the report. Next slide. Expenses for reportable individuals. So for, again, the 3-month period ending June 30th, total expenditures were for 47,935, with the biggest contributors being development and training and out-of-town travel. And this is primarily related to conferences that councillors have attended, such as FCM and NSFM, as well as a few others, and travel to and from. Full details of that report are available in attachment 10 of the report. Next slide. So I'm just going to pivot a little bit and highlight some pressures that we're seeing leading into the 24-25 budget and business planning season. Again, these are a lot of pressures that we would have been experiencing last year that are persisting and have already been highlighted in the risks of this presentation. So inflation is impacting costs across the board. Particularly, we're seeing it in utility costs as well as service contracts, particularly those impacted by increases in the living wage. Staffing, as mentioned previously, there is difficulty filling certain positions. We currently have one collective agreement under negotiation, and another one will be expiring at the end of this fiscal year. Decreasing transfer tax revenues, and I'm going to touch on that a little bit more in the next slide. As well as significant capital from operating required under the current plan. Next slide. So yeah, as mentioned, this is just a summary of transfer tax, and we're just trying to show that the peak that we saw in fiscal 21-22 at 81 million. You can see last year that decreased. Fiscal 22-23, we ended up just under 75 million. And then this fiscal, we're projecting, so that 66 million is our projected year-end balance of transfer tax revenue. Next slide, please. Okay, so finally, capital pressures. Again, a lot of the pressures on the capital side are similar to what we're seeing in the operating. inflation across all industries. This is leading to de-scoping, retendering, or deferral of projects in some cases to future years. Staffing shortages, as highlighted, it's impacting internal positions, but it's also impacting our vendors as well, and is impacting our ability to deliver work in a timely manner. The impact of severe weather, it's putting pressure to escalate attention to aging infrastructure and deferred maintenance. And then significant population growth, difficulty maintaining pace and expanding our large infrastructure inventories with the current growth of the municipality. So next slide, that's the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for that presentation. As a reminder to the committee, if you would like to ask any questions, please enter that in the Zoom chat, and we will and I will get to you. Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much to our staff members. So I guess I'll put the motion on there. It's recommended that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee forward the first quarter 23-24 financial report to Regional Council for their info.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Go ahead. Thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gamming. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
So thank you for this. It's somewhat sobering, but not, I don't think, terribly surprising. We're going to be dealing in a few minutes with transferring some money from reserves to cover the cost of disasters, and those costs are only going to go up, I think, in the years to come. And we're going to have to, I'm very pleased that we have our Halifax plan, which has put us in a position that not that many cities are in, of recognizing the challenge of climate and doing something about it. So the question is on a deed transfer. So the deed transfer, I'm just wondering, like, for many, many years, we underestimated deed transfer. And this year, even with a deficit of whatever it's meant to be, we're going to be at 66, and the projection was 70. What's the, is it $10 million shortfall? I'm looking, I don't have the slide here, but it's probably the best budgeting we've done on deed transfer in many, many years, even though we don't like the result of it. How certain are we? Like, how much? How do you track what you expect to get? It's always a tricky thing, right? So, because you don't know exactly what's going to be sold, but what's the certainty in terms of where we're going to end up on deed transfer tax? That's probably a Jerry question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that question. So, you know, typically, you know, when we you know, budget our revenues, right, we're 85% funded from taxes, right? So, you know, we have, there's two proxies that we use, right? One is the assessment base, and then one is the assessment roll. So it's a straight up sort of A times B equals C when it comes to revenue projections, right? Deed transfer tax is, as we've said, you know, as long as I've been around, it's a very volatile tax. It's very hard to budget for. And you're right, Mr. Mayor, in past years, we've been very conservative on budgeting for deed transfer tax because of that volatility, and because of, you know, certainly mitigating financial risk in terms of the position that we're in right now, right? Because you never want to have to get to a point where you're relying on that tax, and then you have to start dialing it back down. So what we look at is, you know, we look at certainly market conditions, we look at number of sales, comparables over years. You know, the interest rate environment is certainly has a big impact, and as we've seen over the last years, rates have borrowing costs have about tripled. Other factors certainly, you know, there's a bunch of factors that go into that. We do use econometric forecasts on the housing market just to try to pull information from all sources on that. But the last few years, in terms of managing some of the big tax increases that we've come forward with and trying to mitigate that increase, we have been budgeting a little bit more aggressively to try to mitigate those increases. I know that was a bit of a long-winded answer, but there's many factors that contribute to the housing market. We're not seeing, again, the level of commercial purchases that we've seen in past years as well.
Right. So I don't know if I don't see a time thing or anything, but
You have 1 minute.
okay, that's plenty. So Jerry, I'm just wondering though, like, do we have like a funnel or anything that says, you know, these commercial assets are for sale at the present point in time? Like, is there anything that sort of looks at the marketplace and says these things might be sold, these things are sold, these things are close to being sold? Is that something we have access to even?
No, not really. We do have access to, we look at CBRE's commercial market outlook. It's on a very macro level, but thing about commercial sales is we don't know about the sales. They are very closely held in private until the sale is announced. And a lot of times we find out about the commercial sales through reporting in the All Nova Scotia.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Last thing I would just say is, as we look at our capital budgets going forward, two of my favorite words, probably said this before at committee, is our value and engineering. And, that we're going to have to make sure as we go forward on capital budgets that we maximize our capital dollars. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, and I would say, Mr. Mayor, as we go forward with capital budget, I think the thing that we need to be really focused on is, as we move forward, debt funded projects that are pushed out sort of into the future. Those projects, they don't impact any taxes or expenses until those projects start and are completed. I would, what I think we need to focus on is really looking at what we're funding from capital from operating, and are those projects getting completed in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the report as well. So the report is very in-depth, and I love all the charts and all the numbers, and it's great. I also really appreciate the rolled up presentation, sort of the Coles Note version, seeing it right quickly. So I'm sure that that's going to be shared with members of the committee. Thank you very much. One of the things I'm worried about is that where this is a first quarter report, and yes, we're projecting a deficit, there are some pressures that we're going to maintain throughout the entire year. And then there are some sort of small initiatives that might make a difference. For example, using the reserve fund and whether or not we'll get disaster relief funding from other levels of government. How do we protect so that you don't have this mystery that all of a sudden you get to the third quarter, the fourth quarter, and it's like the province, you projected a deficit and you turn up with a surplus. I don't really think that that's going to happen to us as a municipality. But when we give these quarter reports, I'm wondering if there is a way to sort of show the trend that is staying, so that of this projected deficit, what percentage of it do we think is still going to remain? What percentage of it do we think that there might be an opportunity to recover? So just trying to see how we look from one quarter to the next quarter to the next quarter, so that there isn't a big shock at year end.
Thank you for the question. Dave Harley, Director of Accounting and Financial Reporting.
Hi, Dave.
How are you? One of the things we do when we do these projections is we're always looking to see where we're going to actually finish our the end of our fiscal year. So that's what we're trying to project at this point in time. So we're taking the best of the information we have available to us at this point in time and making those projections forward to the end of the fiscal year. So the intent is always to never to have those swings of the ups and downs. That said, there are always things that can happen throughout the fiscal year that will change our outlook So in case of, we've seen this year, we've had significant issues with some weather events that have caused us to have additional expenses that we would not have expected to have at the start of the year. And there's the potential that, any additional thing like that can change our financial outlook by the end of the year. So in most cases, we're constantly looking at that. We're reviewing those numbers on a regular basis and continually updating them. And that's why we bring this report to council on a quarterly basis to always give you our freshest look at what those expenditures and what those revenues may be by the time we get to the end of the year. In a case like this year, where we know we've had these significant things, and we have a report that's actually following today that's going to have an impact on that. So that report was not done in time to update the projections, but that's why we've also, as part of Tiffany's report that she just did, she provided an update as to what some of those additional expenditures are that we've seen that have come forward since we put this projection report together. And we're going to be continually updating that. So while we don't expect to have any significant swings the other way, as we saw with the provincial numbers that came out recently, we do expect that there's going to be changes from what we're presenting today as we go throughout the year and as events happen or as more information becomes available to us. So we're always trying to refine that and always trying to provide council with our best estimate of where we're going to finish the year.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. I don't see any further speakers on the list, so I'm curious. I'm especially interested in the risk reserve and recognizing that this was the projection as of the end of June, and then we had the flood in July, and we now have the response to it. And Dave, as you mentioned, the next motion. I'm just wondering, will we be able to recover some of the risk reserve through the year, other than through the capital changes that we're going to be making, or are we going to be, after that next motion, is it basically going to be remaining pretty much depleted through the rest of the year?
To you, Mr. Chair. So we do have some of those amounts that we are expecting to recover in the shorter time frame, things that are going to be covered off through insurance claims and other avenues like that. So the longer term ones are where we actually have to go and are relying on a claim put forward to the provincial emergency management office and their disaster financial relief claim. Those ones tend to be longer term in terms of how long we are when we would expect to get the funds returned to us. So what we're going to be looking at as we get into this budget year is also, and as part of our overall look at our reserves in general, is a regular funding source for reserves like the risk reserve, and how we can actually ensure we have an appropriate amount of money set aside in that reserve going forward. So we will expect to get some of those funds back within the next year. And we'll use those to replenish funds in that reserve, but we're also looking at other options for how we fund that reserve.
I see. Okay. And how are we doing as far as tracking the fuel lift? We have a projection in there, a buffer for changes in the fuel cost. I'm just wondering how that is going, at least as of June 30 this year.
So we do track our fuel costs as they continue throughout the year, and then we do a projection for the rest of the year based on what we've seen as that trend and where we actually expect those fuel costs may go throughout the rest of the year. This year, when we did our budget, we actually had projected a larger increase than we've actually seen so far this year. So we're actually not looking like we're in too bad a position in terms of our fuel costs, especially as it comes to diesel for our transit and our fleet.
Super. Okay. Thank you very much. Once again, I don't see any further speakers on the list. Are we ready for the question? Okay. Thank you. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. That motion passes. And again, thank you, Jerry and Dave and your team. The next item on the agenda is 13.2.2, Risk and Resiliency Reserve Withdrawals and Emergency Funding. There is no presentation with this, but staff is available to answer questions. So would someone from the committee be interested in putting the motion on the floor?
I can do that, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Move that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee recommend to Regional Council to one, approve a transfer of 15 million from the Capital Funds Reserve Q526 into the Risk and Resiliency Reserve Q416. Two, approve an unbudgeted withdrawal of up to 25 million from the Risk and Resiliency Reserve Q416. And three, approve the full remaining balance of the Risk and Resiliency Reserve Q416 after the withdrawal of the 25 million as set forth in recommendation 2 of the staff report dated September 11, 2023, be used towards unbudgeted costs for remediation and replacement of expenditures related to, next page, emergency and disaster events, which are more fully described in this report. And 4, direct that any funding that is received from other external sources, such as provincial or federal government relief programs, be allocated to the Risk and Resiliency Reserve Q416. So move.
Thank you for seconding that, Councillor Hensby. Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Well, I think that, in the previous discussion and in the report, we've seen the need to look at the Risk and Resiliency Reserve withdrawal for the emergency funding, and hope that we recruit some of that disaster funding as soon as possible. But it seems fairly clear that this is the option that is available to us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you very much for this. Thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. I'll just state the obvious. We are the order of government, and not just Halifax or just in Nova Scotia, but across the country. It is municipal governments that are bearing a lot of these costs, and we have the least ability to bear the costs. And we also have the least ability to have to wait years to get these costs back. The provincial government had a budget this year of something like $1.4 billion more than they had last year. We don't have that benefit. As soon as people move to a community in Nova Scotia that's led by Halifax, the provincial government start getting the benefits of that right away, from income tax and sales tax and everything else. We don't get it until people hopefully buy a house or go into an apartment where they contribute to the property tax of that apartment. There's a big push across the country for a new fiscal framework, and there'll be meetings in the next couple of weeks on that. But in the meantime, I think it's the least that we should be expected to be reimbursed these monies a lot more quickly than we have been. Legendarily, Hurricane Juan, we didn't get repaid for years. And so it's unfortunate. And I think we need to have a conversation with our provincial and federal partners about, particularly, there's the disaster mitigation and adaptation fund. Federally, we're applying for that. We get that. We've got the Green Municipal Fund. But when these are costs that everybody knows we're entitled to reimbursement for, we should be getting it faster than, years down the road. It's frustrating for sure, right? So hopefully we'll be able to recover these quickly and put the money back in the reserve fund.
I would agree with that. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm curious. We are transferring money out of the Capital Funds Reserve. And I've got a couple of questions about the capital projects. First of all, are we recognizing that we have had a number of natural disasters and they have caused a lot of work, and the work is ongoing to recover from those natural disasters, and that takes away from the hours that are available to work on the capital projects that we have. Are we going to be able to meet the expectations that we had at the budget time of what capital projects would be delivered this year. And recognizing that we're taking 15 million out of the capital fund reserve, are we going to have to do something about funding for that? I'm not sure who would be able to address either of those.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start with that one, and I'll start with the, the second part of your question, right? So we are transferring 15 million from the capital reserve, right? So that was an uncommitted balance. So that funding was not committed to any capital projects. So it's, in terms of the capital projects that we have, they're going forward. So we're moving that money into the risk reserve. The first part of your question, I think it deals with, you're talking about our overall capital plan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and I think it's, the theme has been clear through our financial reporting and through our capital reporting that it is tough to deliver capital at the rate that we're budgeting, just based on inflationary. And I think one of the biggest constraints is the labor market, both externally for external contractors to take on the work, as well as our internal hiring as well, right? And as we see, like the capital market, I mean, the hospital are getting, they've advanced their road plan. They're getting ready to advance on their healthcare, and they're to build a hospital. That is going to be labor impacts that are going to certainly impact us going forward. But I think overall, looking at this, and and to the mayor's point, I think council should look at this and really say, it is a hard pill to swallow. We've had a year in the last year 4 major weather disaster events, if you want to call that. I think council should be look at it from a financial risk perspective. We do have money in a risk reserve, and that was set up a couple years ago, we looked at it in terms of being able to cover off 1 month of operating expenses. So we do have flexibility within our reserves. I know a lot of times when we report here, we say that our reserves are highly committed, and they are, because we have a very aggressive capital plan with a lot of growth and a lot of big projects in it. But to cover off some of these costs, we can do that. And I would say, with this report, this is more a bit of a cash flow and accounting exercise. So it's covering off those costs. Dave said it's going to be, we probably, things that are recoverable through insurance, we'll get those back sooner. But the things that have to go through the FDA claims are going to take, years, like 4 or 5 years. Like we had a call with the province last week, and, Hurricane Dorian claim, which was 4 years ago, that has not progressed forward with any type of payouts. So, I hope I answered your question somewhat. This will have, certainly an impact on our risk reserve. And as Dave said, we do need to take the time and try to figure out to get some funding back in there, because hurricanes seem to be a norm right now. But we'll be bringing that forward through the next budget cycle. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. I do have one further thing, and it relates to one of the information items, and I messaged the CAO about this a little earlier. So I can either ask for the report to come back, or I can ask it here, and I'll leave that to your discretion. the report talks about spending $11 million on fencing related to the wildfires. I'm having a hard time resolving that. If I look at the number of houses that burned down and the protections that we had to give for those houses, that math is hard to justify. So I'm wondering, was it those houses that burned down, or was it beyond that? Can we have some understanding of what that $11 million was for, please?
Sure, I'll start that question and then Jerry can add to it if he wishes. So the fencing came into play when we were working to return evacuated residents to their neighborhood. And the direction from the fire chief and emergency management office is that the properties needed to be secured to enable different communities to return to their area. I would view the fencing as a benefit to all of the evacuated residents versus necessarily a benefit that's solely for the benefit of the property owner. And we did, of course, I'm a frugal accountant, so as CAO, when we were in the EOC, I was asking questions about, well, can we use the orange snow fence? Do we have snow fence? Can we just put up signage and mark the hazards? So there were other alternatives, that were considered, but from a safety perspective, the direction was no, we needed to do chain link fencing, we needed to do fencing. There were supply chain issues at the time. It was very difficult for us to get fencing. You may recall during that emergency response, one of the delays for us getting people back to their homes was actually getting the fencing contractors and getting the fencing done. So once we determined that we needed to do the fencing, if we wanted to allow approximately 12,000 residents to get back to their properties, then it became a matter of how do we procure it under the existing approved procurement policies. And we went to standing offer. Now, in retrospect, one of the lessons learned, we've never had to do this before. Not sure going to standing offer for fencing is the best route that we could do, but it was the only route available to us at the time. So one of the go forward lessons is we're looking at, do we need different types of agreements set up for emergency events to procure these kind of goods? So I believe right now we're still in the midst of discussions with fencing contractors, with property owners, with the province regarding disaster financial assistance claims, and with the Insurance Bureau of Canada. So some component of fencing will be borne through property owners' insurance. Of course, there'll be a couple of property owners who we know may not have property insurance. There will be a portion that we hope to recover through disaster financial assistance, and there may be a portion that also rests with the municipality that would have been expended for the broader public benefit of enabling the group of residents to return home. Jerry, is there anything you want to add to that? Because you've been directly in the discussions most recently.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll add there is the best route always in terms of procurement is always through a competitive procurement, right? When we are in an emergency situation, as the CAO has said, that there's no time to do competitive procurements. They usually take up to 2 weeks. So you use the resources that you have available. And as the CAO said, in this case, we had a standing offer. Standing offers are basically a contract with the supplier. They are done through a competitive process where we set up standing offers through, we do a call to the industry around that. So just for information there, in emergency situations, when you do alternative procurements, you don't always have the opportunity to, go and get the best pricing that is available. And the only other thing, I'll say, and I see the solicitor has his hand up, but with regards to the fencing, there's, the fire chief has special powers around safety and things like that. So I think, with the Insurance Bureau Canada and the fire chief, that was the direction given on fencing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jerry. Go ahead, John.
Just to add to Jerry's point in terms of the fire chief's powers, it's more an issue with respect to the fire chief's obligations to ensure that a property is rendered safe when it's returned to the owner and the insurance company, if there is one. And so in the normal course, if there is a fire, it's usually sufficient to put up tape, and we have an individual who's on site and their insurance adjuster, and they are then responsible for the safety. What happened in Fort McMurray, my understanding was that due to the wide extent of the damage, the insurance industry worked with the municipal units in the province to essentially, have the fire chief / municipality fence off the dangerous spots, which, largely meant open foundations and unfortunately septic fields. And so that was a reasonable approach at the time if the municipality wanted to have individuals return to their homes in a reasonable fashion as opposed to one by one. And so that's the underlying obligation that had to be met. And now, of course, we're looking at how that plays out through disaster relief and the rest of it.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Kathy and Jerry and John. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Certainly, I agree with you, Chair, that that's a number that's kind of staggering when you look at the the cost of it. It's unbelievable. I assume we're going to have other costs that are contributing to they're going to contribute to Q2 in terms of operational costs, staffing costs, and everything else. It's very expensive. So my question is, waiting for the money is one thing. What certainty do we have that we actually will get it? So Hurricane Juan, for example, what percentage of what we applied for did we get, either in that decade or since? Like, what is our certainty of actually getting this money back, let alone the timing of it?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Kathy.
So I'll start because I was CFO when we did those claims. Jerry, I think, would have been in finance perhaps when the money actually was recouped. But my recollection is that we did recoup a large portion of what we submitted. But that speaks more to the quality of the submission process. And I'm sure that everything we have accumulated in work orders, we will not have, we'll find that some of it's not eligible or we don't have the documentation for. But once we actually make the claim, I would anticipate that a high amount of it would be recouped. Jerry, do you have a percentage from the last time?
I don't have a percentage. We can certainly go back and get that. Uncertainty of cost. What I can say is these claims go under a fairly scrutinized audit process. So that is one of the contributing factors to the time. What I will say, and I hope this will, maybe give council some assurance that we are working behind the scenes and to ensure we have the proper reporting mechanisms and controls in place to be able to put together a quality claim. I know Dave Harley and myself and Joel Plater from insurance, we've had several calls thus far with the province on our claims, one as recent as last Friday. Overall, I think there's a good assurance that, our claims are going to be justifiable. We have set up work orders. As you know, for example, on the floods, there was 1,500 work orders that came out of that. We track those costs. Dave and his team set up a work order so we can track all costs related to cleanup and remediation and emergency response. But it does take a lot of work to go through those and put all the paper together. But, I believe that, we have good controls, reporting mechanisms in place that we didn't have during Hurricane Juan. That'll make this a much more efficient claim. But at the same time, we have 4 claims going on right now, but it remains to be seen on timing. But I think we can say, there's a good level of assurance that we will receive that money. However, it will be, 4, 5, 6 years out.
And we don't have the, do we have the option of charging interest?
I don't believe so, Mr. Mayor.
Might be something we need to consider in light of cost of borrowing these days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along the same line, Jerry, did I hear you say that we're still waiting for the claim on Dorian?
That claim hasn't been finalized by the provincial government, and just we didn't submit a claim for Dorian based on the expenses that we absorbed for that storm.
We didn't put any expense in, any claim in?
No, we
Okay.
didn't submit a claim for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
What,
thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
I'm just asking, I missed that. We didn't submit it. We didn't have any expenses from Dorian?
We had expenses for Dorian, but I think the leadership at the time, it was decided that we did not submit a provincial claim for those expenses, just based on, I think it was looked at it from a cost benefit point of view, in terms of, like I said, it's a fair amount of work to gather all those costs and then submit, and the timeline involved.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. I'm surprised. I mean, did we, so we didn't actually accumulate those costs and submit it because we thought that we wouldn't get enough money to cover the effort of putting it together? Is that what I'm hearing?
That is what my understanding of that is, Mr. Mayor. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, is there anything further?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Sorry, I think I'm still processing about the whole Dorian conversation, so I'll go back and think about that a bit. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any further speakers on the list. Are we ready for the question? Go ahead, CAO.
I am just wondering whether the Audit and Finance Committee would like us to provide an answer via email or information report on Hurricane Dorian at a later point. Of course, Jerry was not the CFO and I was not the CAO then, so we don't really have the answer for you today.
I think that would be great. I'll make a motion if it's necessary, or else I'll just trust that we'll get I think an info, am I on mute? I think an info report would be helpful, just sort of indicating what we expected the cost would be and why we didn't submit. Yeah, I think that would be great for me. Do I need a motion for that, Mr. Chair?
That's up to the CAO.
I'd rather not do a motion. I'll just, if I don't need to.
I would agree with that.
I'd
CAO.
agree as well.
Thank you.
CAO. And Jerry, would you be able to bring that report back without a motion?
Certainly, we'll bring a report back on that. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for your accommodation into that. Go ahead, Councillor Hensby.
Yeah, I just can't imagine with all these tree debris drop-off sites we had and all the chipping, there's got to be some expense to that. So I'm just kind of curious what if that report's going to contain all those tree debris drop-off fields and the cost of processing all that stuff.
I suspect that will be included in the report. Thank you very much, Councillor Hensby. I don't see any further speakers on the motion. Are we ready for the question? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye. All opposed? Great, thank you very much. That motion passes. The next item on the list is 13.2.3, the former Herring Cove Treatment Plant Community Integration Fund proposed upgrade to William King Elementary School Park Playground. Can someone put the motion on the floor, please?
Mr. Chairman, I'll put the motion that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council approve the transfer of $55,000 from the option reserve Q421 to capital account CP2000001, the park recapitalization for the purpose of capital upgrades to the William King Elementary School Park Playground.
second,
Thank you very much, Councillor Daigle-Gammon, for seconding that. Councillor Hensby, is there anything on it?
Very straightforward, the request. I believe the money was raised from that area for the water and sewer line extensions, and I think that the money should remain in the community with the school. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see any further speakers in the list. Are we ready for the question?
question,
Question's been called. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Great, thank you. That motion passes. The next items on the agenda are, there is nothing from the Grants Committee. There is nothing from members of Standing Committee. There are no motions. The next few items are in camera.
Motion to approve the minutes of in-camera minutes of August the 16th, 2023.
Second.
Seconded by the mayor. All in favor, please signify by saying aye, or do we need to go in camera for that one? Okay.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes have been approved. Next, excuse me, and for 15.2 and 15.3, would people like to go in camera?
I'll move we go in camera.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Seconded by Councillor Daigle-Gammon. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Great. We're going to go in camera, which means we would leave this Zoom meeting and join the Teams meeting, and then we will return to the Zoom meeting upon conclusion of the in-camera business. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in Teams.
I think we have quorum there, Mr. Chairman. Just I see the mayor's not joined us yet.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for the in-camera session, and thank you for returning to the public session. Let's ratify those motions that we discussed in camera. So can I have someone move 15.2, please? Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would move that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee, one, adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private and confidential report dated September 6, 2023, and two, direct that the private and confidential report dated September 6, 2023 be maintained private and confidential.
Thank you very much, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Thank you, Councillor Hensby, for seconding that. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you, Councillor Hensby. Can you take care of 15.3, please?
Yes, that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee, one, adopt the recommendations outlined in the private and confidential report dated June 1st, 2023, and two, direct the private and confidential report dated June 1st, 2023 be maintained private and confidential.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Stoddard, and welcome to the meeting. All in favor of 15.3, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Great, thank you very much. Moving ahead with the agenda, there are no added items. Notices of motion. Not seeing any notices of motion. The date of the next meeting of the Audit and Finance Standing Committee is October 18th, 2023. We will try and have this one in person. And can I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, sir.
Thank you very much, Councillors Hensby. We stand adjourned. Have a great day, everybody.
Ciao. I found the protest there, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.